What's up, guys? I'm Jack, and this is Daisy. What was that, Daisy? Say hi. Come here. Good enough. And welcome to another video. Whew. So, last two videos are pretty good, huh? I guess the YouTube gods finally decided to give me at least a little bit of a chance because we went from 1,800 subscribers to 7,000. So that's pretty good. So before I get started with the actual challenge, I just want to say thank you. It's honestly really amazing to see this starting to go somewhere. It's making my dreams come true. So thank you. But enough of that sappy stuff. You guys are here for Elden Ring, and today I'm going to be doing a katana only Nuzlocke of Shadow of the Erdtree. So what are the rules of this run? Well, I'm going to put them all on screen right here, so if you want to pause and read them, go for it. But if not, I will just summarize my Nuzlocke rules. So basically, I can only use katanas, but if I die while holding or using a katana, I lose that for the rest of the run. And if I lose every katana I have access to, the run's over, and we lost. And again, there are a bunch of other rules that make this even more difficult than I put on screen earlier, but I don't want to bore you guys with a million rules, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. So after grabbing all of my favorite talismans, we're going to go ahead and fight Commander Gaius first. And that's because behind Gaius are 5 Scadutree fragments that I would very much like to obtain. Great katanas are also usable during this run, hence why I'm using it for Gaius here, though I did lose the Great Katana on my first attempt at a boss fight. So that sucks. And I go ahead and put it in our chest, never to be seen again. For this next attempt, I'm going to be using the Serpent Bone Blade, and this is a katana that you get from the Volcano Inner quest line, and it applies deadly poison. Overall, it's a katana. Oh, a couple of things I want to mention. First thing, this is a new character. That's why we still need to collect Scadutree fragments and whatnot. But off screen, I did collect a lot. Basically everything that I could get my grubby paws on without fighting any bosses. So with that in mind, I also have a lot of Sites of Grace already. So our traversal sections during this run are going to be pretty light. Finally, I just want to talk about katanas and great katanas as weapon type. So they are amazing. So first off, most katanas natively apply bleed buildup, which is just amazing. But on top of that, they also all have some pretty decent range. Their movesets are very simple and effective, and their guard counters are super quick and accurate. So that's kind of why I went with the Nuzlocke challenge here. I figured just a regular katana only playthrough would be a bit too easy. And the last thing I want to mention is that for basically every single boss fight, I will be using the deflecting hard tier, which allows us to parry attacks and get guard counters off. It's kind of like playing Sekiro, so that's fun. Anyway, attempt 2 of Commander Gaius has been going very well so far. I still have a lot of my healing left, and he's already down to below half health, thanks to the deadly poison buildup of the Serpent Bone Katana that also got us some sweet extra free damage. And I'm also just going to quickly mention the difference between poison and deadly poison. Essentially, deadly poison is just a lot faster acting than regular poison, and it just does more damage in a shorter time. Also, in the top right-hand corner of the screen, you guys are going to see 14 there. That's basically our life counter. That's how many katanas we have access to currently. Though at this point it is 13, I just forgot to take one off for losing our great katana earlier. Anywho, we managed to get a guard counter and riposte off on Commander Gaius, and that takes him down to barely any health left. I figure a few more hits and he'll be done for. He's also poisoned, so if we really wanted to, we could just run away and let the poison take him out. But instead, we get one final riposte and Gaius is down. Well, our first attempt didn't go as well as I would hope, but our second attempt was very smooth. We got the 5 Scadutree fragments behind him, and with that, we can begin to move to our next boss. So I head to the Cathedral of Manus Meter, grab the whole laden necklace from the Finger Priest dude, experience great anger on my way to the Finger Bells, and then ring the bell. After that, I don't know why, but I decided to go to Castle Ensis instead. And I guess instead of fighting Metter, we're gonna fight Rolana next. And on my run through this place, I decide to not equip a weapon so that if I do get wiped, we don't lose anything. But eventually we do make it through unscathed, and we're gonna be using our Ice Lightning Katana. I think it's called the Dragon Scale Blade, maybe? I honestly forgot, I recorded this run weeks ago. But Frostbite is a great status effect, and since part of Rolana's arena is covered in water, we get 10% extra damage from our lightning attacks, while she's standing in it at least. So I don't expect us to run into too many problems here. This is also generally a really fun fight with the deflecting hard tier, so that also helps. We get a beautiful guard counter, poise break, frostbite, and riposte off, which absolutely annihilates her health bar, and then a couple hits after that is going to take her into her second phase. Things do get a bit dicey here, because if we get caught in one of her unending combos, she will wipe us. So we just can't get too cocky here. Our Ice Lightning Sword does lose its buff, so we're going to have to find a second to reapply that if we want the extra damage, and before long we get a chance to. We also get some extra damage off on her with the Ash of War, which was unnecessary, but appreciated nonetheless. After a few more light attacks, Rolana is down to about a third health, and the Frostbite has also worn off. So we can reapply it and get another proc of it on her. And one more guard counter should also take her into a poise break. So hopefully with this riposte, we can proc Frostbite, which happens, and she's left quite literally one shot, leaving our Ash of War to take her out. That was fun. Sweet. Rolana down, we can continue moving. I suppose it's time to fight the Divine Beast Dancing Lion next, and this is usually the first boss that you would fight in the Shadow Realm, so I think it's about time, yeah. And on the way up, I bring my trusty Moonveil Katana, which, by the way, is my favorite weapon in Elden Ring, and the only reason that I wanted to do this challenge in the first place. I literally just wanted a reason to use Moonveil in a challenge run, so that's why we're doing this. So thankfully we make it all the way up without any deaths, and we can head into the Divine Beast Dancing Lion's arena. So for those of you who don't know, the Moonveil Katana used to be one of the most powerful weapons in all of Elden Ring. It just did an insane amount of damage, as well as poise damage. That, combined with the fact that it was just super easy to use, made it incredibly overpowered. FromSoft did nerf the Moonveil Katana, but it's still really good. So, yeah, love this thing. Its Ash of War Transient Moonlight is just the unsheathed Ash of War, but it has more range and it does magic damage, so it's awesome. So I also have an idea for another challenge run. I have like so many ideas right now that I'm going to be doing at some point or another. But one that I really want to try is, well, I want to do it with one of my friends, so we would have to find a 2-player game. And whenever we die, we would eat a slightly spicier pepper each time. You know, starting with maybe a bell pepper and then ending at a Carolina Reaper, depending on how many times we die. So I think that would be super entertaining. I would love to do that in Elden Ring on my own, of course, as well. I think that would be fun too, but I just think it would be more fun with somebody else there. So if you guys have any ideas for games for that, please let me know. I was thinking Call of Duty Zombies, just because that's a classic, but we are both open to ideas. Anyway, while I was talking about that, we basically destroyed the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Yeah, again, this wasn't a big surprise considering how much range we have with the Moonveil Katana and how much damage it still does even post-nerf. And don't worry, even though this is my favorite weapon, I'm not going to be using it throughout the entire run. I'll probably use a different katana for each boss that we fight. So by spamming our Ash of War as much as I possibly could, we defeated the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. But before I leave Belurat Tower Settlement, I want to stop by in here to fight a guy who just spawns in out of nowhere. His name is Queenline, Fire Knight Queenline, and he actually drops a really good Ash of War that I want to put on my Nagakiba. So for this, I use the Starline sword to just destroy him, and it's kind of funny how effective it is. He just doesn't dodge anything and just dies. And then upon his defeat, he drops the Flame Skewer at Ash of War, which, again, we're going to be putting on our Nagakiba. And I'm headed down into the Church District next in order to fight the Sunflowers. So for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure is like 0 of you, the Sunflowers are incredibly weak to fire damage. So this Flame Art Nagakiba with Flame Skewer on it is going to be our ace in the hole. And I specifically chose the Nagakiba for this because of its incredible range. I figured that would make it a lot easier to hit that stupid sunflower head. And I just want to mention that I love this boss design so much. Like, it's kind of goofy, but also beautiful and amazing, and this is probably my favorite boss design in the game. Definitely not my favorite boss fight. I think it kind of sucks as a boss fight, but really cool design. So even though we almost got wiped by the sunflower due to blood loss and thorns, each swipe from our Nagakiba does an insane amount of damage to him. Now the first sunflower is always the easiest. It has the most simplistic moveset and the least amount of health. But that's okay, because we can get an awesome riposte off on this first sunflower head, which gets us some extra damage on the next one. So I imagine we're going to be just fine during this fight. Sorry, that's not really adding too much suspense. Hang on. The next sunflower pops up, and he does so much damage to us, and if we don't dodge every single attack unfailingly, we will most certainly perish. He is truly the deadliest of bosses in the Shadow Realm, so we gotta be real careful here. Uh-oh. If we're not careful here, you could just wipe us and end the run. We could lose every single katana to this monster of a boss, this sunflower. Anyway, every slash from our sword and thrust from our flame skewer takes the sunflower down even lower. Even though the middle one has more health, we still do a tremendous amount of damage with each attack. So it's really only a matter of time until we get to the third phase. And while we wait, I do have a question for you guys. So in like 2 months, I'm going to be driving across the US with Daisy, of course. I'm actually moving from South Carolina to Washington State, which is going to be pretty neat. But would you guys be interested in seeing mine and Daisy's journey across the West? Let me know in the comments so I can either plan to make that or not. Anyway, second sunflower is down. That just leaves one left. And this third one, what the heck? I've never seen that before. That's weird. Okay, well, the third one always starts off with a giant AoE attack, and he's still just floating there. Okay. Well, that was odd. Anyway, he always starts off with a giant AoE attack, which when we are able to dodge it in time and when he's not floating in the air, it leaves him very vulnerable for a couple of seconds afterwards. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to take advantage of that, but there will be another opportunity for us to dodge that AoE attack and punish him pretty soon here. But the second time that he does it, it actually fires off 3 times. So if we get hit by 2 of those, we're actually dead. So thankfully we did manage to dodge 2 out of the 3 bursts, and with that we can charge up and finish this fight. Sunflowers down. I think it's time to head to the beautiful Cerulean Coast, and we actually go at nighttime for once. I don't think I've ever seen this place at night, and it's awesome. And we of course head down the Deep Stone Crypt, and thank God I wasn't holding any katanas, because I may or may not have missed a jump here. It's not really my fault though, because as I went to jump, this guy just poked me in the butt with his fork, and it caused me to fall and die. So that's rough, but again, we weren't holding anything, so we didn't technically lose any weapons. I somehow managed to make it through the rest of the Deep Stone Crypt without too many problems and without any other deaths. And this is what's going to take us into the fight with the Putrescent Knight. And for this one, I decided to use Rivers of Blood. And there was no particular reason as to why I chose Rivers of Blood, I just thought it would be fun for this fight. And my god. Unlike the Moonveil nerf, which still left it in a pretty good state, Rivers of Blood kind of sucks now. Yeah, if you guys weren't around for the Elden Ring launch, this weapon was also insanely powerful. And I wouldn't call it like a bad weapon. It's just nowhere near as good as it once was. Moonveil at least is still very, very decent and very good. But Rivers of Blood is just like meh now. So the Putrescent Knight is genuinely a boss fight that I never feel truly safe. His attacks generally just deal a lot of damage, and even though he doesn't have the most health, his movements are still pretty jerky, and he does ride around on his horse a lot, which makes it difficult to hit him. It's definitely not the hardest boss fight in the game. I'm just not very consistent when I'm doing it. So next week I got a torch only run coming up for you guys, which was really fun. And that's also a Nuzlocke. I'm currently on Melania. I haven't done the boss fight because I have to edit this video first, of course. But torch only Nuzlocke next week, and that was so much fun. I'm excited for you guys to see that one, for sure. And while I'm just plinking away at the Putrescent Knight here, I just want to say thank you to my channel members for supporting me. Mary, Micah, and Beer, you guys are amazing, and I love you. And if anybody wants to be a channel member in the future, the option is there in the description. Essentially, you get early access to videos. Whenever I finish editing them, I will post them. And coming up here soon, there's going to be a lot of those early access videos, so just keep that in mind. And you also get a cool little emblem next to your name, depending on how long you've been a member, and also a shout out as well as my undying love and affection. That being said, if you've even made it this far in the video, I appreciate that as well. Your viewership is truly enough for me. And back to the fight, we did take the Putrescent down to about a third health, which is pretty nice, and we can go ahead and dodge all of his ghost flame bursts. Now, getting a guard counter off on him is pretty difficult. We did manage to land one right there, which was nice, but in general, it's not very consistent just because of how often he moves around. So poise breaks are not integral during this boss fight. That being said, I would not complain if we got one right here. Nice. Putrescent Knight down. And I'm just going to go ahead and teleport right over to Mesmer for this next fight. And for this, I'm going to be using the Dragon Scale Blade once more, the Ice Lightning Sword. Again, I don't know if that's its real name. I keep forgetting. But the extra frostbite damage should be very nice against Mr. Mesmer here. So we open the door to the Serpent's Chamber, and it's time to face this beast. Thankfully, he always begins every fight with this big AoE attack, which gives us a chance to use our Ash of War and buff our sword with some Ice Lightning. And we are doing some really good damage with every hit. Like, I am genuinely impressed. And we also got a couple of guard counters off, so one more should get us a nice poise break, though it seems as though he regenerated his poise, so maybe not. We do get a nice frostbite off though. We block his next two attacks and get a guard counter off, which gets the poise break. A riposte takes him almost into the second phase where we can use our Ash of War to push him through. This phase also gives us a nice attack opportunity right off the rip. Once he comes down with his big snake head, we can dodge that, dodge into it, and then get an Ash of War off for some massive damage. And since he phase transitioned, he did recover from the frostbite, so we can proc that again on him. And I think by the time we get a frostbite off on him, he'll be pretty much dead. Thankfully, the Ice Lightning buff on our sword does last a while, so we can keep that going for basically the entirety of the second phase. I dodge his next few snake attacks, which leaves him open, and an Ash of War misses. That being said, he is frostbitten again, so a few more hits should do the trick from here. And right here is where we get our opening to finish the fight. And it's time for a nice long cooking segment. So I'd just gotten home after a long day of work, and I just wanted to make a quick 30-minute pasta, so we put a cup of flour, as well as a pinch of salt, a dash of olive oil, an egg, and a splash of water, all on a cutting board, and we gotta make sure not to let that egg fall off, so just keep an eye on that bad boy. And then I have these two bread tools that I like to use to mix everything around, but you can just use your hands or forks, whatever you want. And your goal is to mix everything on this cutting board until it's all homogeneous. And this part is pretty satisfying to do. It's probably my favorite part of making pasta. But of course, even once this is all together, we're gonna need a sauce for it. Now, we could just have olive oil and salt on our pasta. That's Also decent, I guess, but I'm a big fan of sauce, and fresh sauce especially. So we're gonna form our dough into a ball real quick and just place that back on there and cover it with a paper towel. After that, I put some olive oil in a pan on medium-high heat and add some tomatoes to it. I wish I had more, but I only had 4 small tomatoes. I also add some basil, some chopped carrots, some onions, and a clove of garlic. And we're gonna go ahead and cover that and let it simmer. I slice the ball of dough into halves and form it into a phallic-shaped object, where I then roll it out until it is relatively thin. Now, for the vast majority of you, I'm sure you don't have a pasta machine, so you can roll it out even thinner and then just slice it with a knife, but I do have a pasta machine, so I'm gonna use that to roll it out even thinner, and then just slice it up with the slicer that's on the machine. And right after doing this, you're gonna wanna put a pot of water on the heat and get it boiling, and just keep an eye on the veggies that are in the pan too. You don't want those to burn or anything. The veggies got nice and soft in the meantime, and they are showing some signs of a beautiful Maillard reaction. And I know that may look burned right down there, but I promise it's not. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and mix everything up before I take an immersion blender and put that in the pan to blend everything up. You can also just use a regular blender or a food processor, or you could bash it up in a bowl with a fork if you really want to. The goal is to just make this sauce more of a sauce. And again, I wish I had more tomatoes, but it'll have to do. After it is nice and sauce-like, we're gonna go ahead and add our pasta to the pan, and make sure to save a little bit of pasta water in there, because that massively helps out with the sauce and the stickiness of it. And I just mix everything around until the sauce is perfectly sticking to the pasta. Not too watery, but also not too thick. And after that, we can just add it to a bowl and enjoy. It was pretty good. Again, I really wish I had more tomatoes, but it is what it is. Back to Elden Ring, I suppose, and we're gonna go ahead and teleport right over to Ramana here, and I decide to use the Hand of Melania for my first attempt. This is a lovely katana with a lot of range, so it should do pretty well here. Ramana is weak to fire damage, but it's totally fine that we don't have it on this, as this blade also does bleed damage, which is awesome. And the Ash of War is just sick. And if you really wanted to, you could do a really awesome build with this, with all the talismans that increase your damage with each successive hit, and it'll work extremely well for you. I dodged Ramana's next couple of attacks, and managed to get a light attack off on her. After that, she goes for a big slam, which I do manage to dodge, though she did inflict a bit of Scarlet Rot buildup, and then we get a poise break and riposte. That's pretty good. And since she was stunned for a second, I figure might as well go for a waterfowl dance. And it didn't do much damage to her because she dodged most of it, but that's fine. And then I get caught in a super long combo, and we lost the Hand of Melania. Okay. Let's try that one again. So this time I decide to use Rivers of Blood once more, and I figure it'll be pretty good for this fight considering she is weak to fire damage and can take bleed damage, so yeah. And before long we do manage to get a poise break off, which leads to a riposte and some chunky damage, and we're already doing better than our previous attempt. Furthermore, Rivers of Blood just absolutely decimates her whenever we can get that off, though we won't have too many chances to make that happen. That's okay though. I try to get some guard counters off and to parry her attacks, but it's just difficult with the way that she swings her glaive. So we just don't manage to do that, and we are able to back up for her second phase. Thankfully the fight's already about half over, so we're doing pretty good. We still have almost all of our healing, and most importantly, we have not been Scarlet Rotted yet, which is always helpful. Because honestly, that and Madness are really the only dangerous status conditions, maybe Bleed too. And Frostbite, probably Sleep too, but not too many bosses inflict Sleep. Basically everything except for regular poison. Anyway, we got her below half, and we also get a chance to heal up and restore our FP. She goes for another AoE attack, and I grab my runes from the last run, and she swings and misses. Well, at least for the first two attacks. She does hit us with the third, and in fact almost inflicts Scarlet Rot, which would have been pretty bad. We genuinely have to be careful to not get hit by her attacks at this point. Scarlet Rot will ruin us. It might not cause a wipe, but it's not going to be too good either. So I keep trying for guard counters like a big dummy, and we get even closer to getting inflicted with Scarlet Rot. And this might do it right here. Yeah. So that's not great. And neither is getting hit by her next 2 attacks. At this point in the fight, we are very quickly burning through our remaining healing, and it's honestly not looking too good for Rivers of Blood here. We even got to an inch away from death before we could heal up again, thankfully buying us a bit more time. And since we are Scarlet Rotted, we do have a time limit. We have to take her out soon, or we're gonna die. So hopefully we can dodge some attacks, and I think like 2 or 3 more corpse pilers will take her out. We just have to get a chance to actually use that Ash of War. And some more guard counters would be nice, but again, they are pretty difficult to hit during this fight. Well, we ran out of healing, but I decided to go for a guard counter at the last second, which worked, got the poise break, and 1 more corpse piler took her out. Now we're going through the Dragon Pit Terminus in order to fight Bale, the Dread Dragon. It's not too long before we make it to the foot of the Jagged Peak, and come across some Jagged Peak Drakes that we may or may not have to fight. And the Dragon Hunter Great Katana did not do nearly as much damage as I thought it would, but it still got the job done, which is what really matters in the end. And with the Jagged Peak Drake done, we can go ahead and talk to Egon and grab his finger, which we can then take to the peak of Jagged Mountain and fight Bale. We all know the Dragon Hunter Great Katana is the only real option for this fight, so that's of course what we're going to be bringing in. Bale over here was just a matter of basically sticking to the crotch. So one of the main rules of my challenge runs are that I don't use spirit summons. But Egon is an exception. He will always be allowed in my challenge runs, him and Alexander. So they don't really make the fight any easier. Well, Egon doesn't really make the fight any easier, but he's just here for moral support more or less. Again, say it with me, the main way to beat big bosses in Soulsborne games is to stick to the crotch, which is exactly what we're doing here. We're trying to hit this big stumpy leg of his, and thankfully Egon does get his attention a bit, so we are able to get off some good attacks. The Ash of War does pretty decent damage. It's not crazy, but it's not bad by any means. And I imagine at this point we are getting pretty close to a poise break too. So with the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana, we actually get 30% extra damage against dragons, and 15% extra damage against ancient dragons, like Bale, I assume. So that's pretty neat. It's basically free real estate. On top of that, the Ash of War itself does 20% extra damage to any dragon, ancient or not ancient. So yeah, safe to say we picked the right weapon for this fight. Now, we did get smacked around by Bale a little bit, but we are still looking pretty healthy here as we hit him with a couple of Ashes of War. This katana also inflicts bleed damage, which I really want to do to him, because he just grabbed my buddy Egon and threw him all around, and I am pretty angry at this point. Nobody does that to my friends. So as we dodge a giant AoE attack, we can run right back in and get off another Ash of War. Unfortunately, I missed because he flew away right at the right time, and we dodge a couple of his big laser beam attacks. Not really, we got hit by both of them, but we survived, and that's what matters. So after getting back to full health, we can resume our fight. And he goes for a fire breath attack right in front of us, which is perfect because we can just run around to the side of him and just start hacking away at him. I only got one jump attack off because I was a bit slow, but normally you can get more than one attack off there. He is pretty low regardless though, so not too much more and he should be done. We can pretty easily dodge his ground pound, but I did get hit by one of the after effects when I tried to charge up an Ash of War. Thankfully Egon is smacking him with some arrows and doing some extra damage in the background. Love that guy. Bale goes for a grab attack and actually manages to catch us in it, but we survive with about half of our health. I still have healing though, so I can heal back up and get behind him to go for some more dragon wound slashes. And 2 or 3 more of these should do the trick. Unless of course he runs away like a coward and then hits us with his laser beams. It's fine, everything's fine.
Bale the Dread! You shall haunt me no longer!
Cool. Bale's dealt with. We have Metter, I think we have Midra, and then Radahn, and then we're done. Wow. These Shadow of the Erd Tree videos always go by so quickly compared to the main game ones. So we run to Scadu View, and this is definitely one of the most beautiful places. It's so nice and peaceful. We of course grab the golden braid while we're up here to negate holy damage for our Radahn fight, and ring the finger bell here, before making our way back to the cathedral to ring the second finger bell. And I don't know why, but I always have trouble with Metter here. It might be her moveset, the amount of damage that she does per hit, I don't know. But we are using the Uchi Katana here, and with the Bloody Slash Ash of War on it, we get a bunch of extra bleed buildup. So I'm hoping with that status effect, we should just be able to take her down pretty quickly and hopefully pretty easily. And surprisingly, just a regular charge attack did a lot of damage against her. Maybe this won't be as bad as I thought it would be. Though, I do get hit by a couple of her laser beam attacks, which is fine, because we can get behind her during this attack and do some damage. And we were just using light attacks there to get that bleed buildup, which did proc, and took out about 25% of her health. So we're doing pretty good. I am using a lot of my healing already, which kinda sucks, but it is what it is. I managed to get a guard counter off before taking a lot of damage, forcing me to heal up 2 more times. But she should be close to a guard break. My god, I'm getting hit a lot. Anyway, I get another heavy attack off, another charged heavy, and I did not get the poise break there because she was transitioning to her second phase. We can run right back in and try to get that off. If we get a poise break, we should be able to do some massive damage, especially because she's pretty close to a bleed right here. So a bleed plus a riposte should take her down to about 25% health remaining. So she summons these weird little orb things, and we can just run around and dodge them while we try to get off some Bloody Slash Ashes of War, and we get one off, which does decent damage, but not enough to get either of what we're looking for. Another bleed activation takes out a lot of health, honestly way too much, bleed is too strong, and we do get that poise break, allowing us to riposte and take her down pretty low. I go for another Bloody Slash, which does so much damage, and 1 or 2 more should finish this fight. We're not safe yet though, because after I go for another one, we do almost die, and that would have been rough. But I do manage to heal up before I die, and I get hit by her rapid spin attack, which I always suck at dodging. But after that, I can just run up to her and get off 1 more Bloody Slash for the win. Let's met her down. Onto Midra? Probably? Maybe? Oh, that's right, we actually have to get a new katana. Yeah, we were missing one this entire run. It's the Sword of Night. So after defeating Metter, we can actually teleport right back here to the cathedral, and this is where we'll be invaded by the Sword Hand of Night Yolen, who fell very quickly to our Rakshasha's great katana, This thing is crazy against NPC invaders. They have no idea what to do when you use the Ash of War. After that, Count Ymir will spawn back in, and again, the Weed Cutter Ash of War from Rakshas's Great Katana just demolishes this guy. So after or before you defeat those two, you actually have to go to the Fort of Reprimand to grab an item. And you hop down this little hidey hole here. You can grab a couple of really nice runes here. So it's a Shadow Realm rune, as well as America's rune on top of this pile of bodies. Then we just gotta fight this Omen dude here and take him down. And he drops an Iris of Occultation. I don't know if I said that right, but maybe. So after defeating him, again, we grab the Iris, and with that in hand, we can head back to the Cathedral of Menace Metter and give Eolin here the Iris of Occultation. So with the Iris, we give her Big Depression, and she just dies. So from her body here, we can go ahead and grab the Sword of Night, the final katana that we can get for this run. And I'm not a huge fan of the Ash of War on it, just because it takes so long to charge up. But it's kind of cool, I guess. It's a really cool and edgy design, which I appreciate. So now we gotta head down to Midra. So we gotta go down Skadu Altus on these little tombstone cliff thingies. And the first set goes pretty well, but the second set is where I mistime a jump, and while holding the Sword of Night, I perish. So we didn't even get to use it. Thank you, Sword of Night. It truly was real. It's been real, buddy. I was gonna use that against Midra, but I guess not. So we're gonna go ahead and run through the catacombs and absolutely destroy the Elder Inquisitor over here with our Serpent Bone Blade, which we actually haven't used since our first boss fight of the run. And it's still doing pretty good. This thing is great. With Elder Inquisitor Jory taken care of, we can run through the Abyssal Woods, my personal favorite region in the DLC, just because of how aesthetically spooky it is. First thing we do is head left at the fort to take out the Madding Hand, and we didn't need to fight him, I just wanted to. And we can grab 2 Scatty Tree fragments from that church there. We sneak past the, I forgot what they're called, and can very quickly make our way to Midra's Mats. And we're gonna skip the puzzle inside and just get straight to the fight. For this one, we are using the Starline Sword, which I actually haven't used yet for a boss fight. And this one is really cool. This is one of my new favorite weapons from the DLC. Its Ash of War is just so much fun. I love Ashes of War that have a lot of movement in them. So we destroy this little monkey with Onze's line of stars, and then the Lord of Frenzied Flame appears to avenge his fallen pet. And this is definitely one of the better fights in the game for the deflecting hard tier. 95% of his attacks can be very easily blocked and countered with the hard tier, so it is just incredibly satisfying. On top of that, Midra over here just has like no poise, so it only takes 2 guard counters to actually get a poise break and a riposte. It's lovely. And I remember my first time fighting Midra took me like 8 hours maybe to get the dub. I probably only had like 7 Scatty Tree levels at the time, so I was definitely massively underleveled, but that's totally okay. Because now, after learning his dancey and flowy moveset, we can come back and have some fun with him. Love this fight. So we dodge his giant firebomb attack, then he tries to poke us, but we can sidestep it and get some light attacks off. We then guard counter twice, which leads to a poise break and a riposte, taking Midra below half health. I also use this opportunity to heal up real quick before we continue our fight. I get another guard counter off, and he broke our guard, leaving us stunned, but we can get out of the way before any more harm comes to us. A bleed does massive damage against him, and we can dodge his next attack, getting another poise break and riposte, taking him down into the red. I feel like I should probably try out the Ash of War here, so I try that, but quickly get stunned out of it. But that's alright, because only a few more hits and Midra will be down, leaving only 1. He does hit us with one of his attacks, taking us below half, but since we have a lot of healing, we can heal right back up, and we're completely fine. At this point in the fight, I'm getting a bit cocky, and I really just want to finish him off with an Ash of War use, so I go for that one more time, but get caught in his grab attack. Can you even call it that? It is a brutal attack, by the way. It's crazy that we can just walk that off. But we do. We get back up, heal up, and prepare for another use of our Ash of War. I probably shouldn't have risked anything, but again, I was getting pretty cocky and I wanted to show off by using an Ash of War to finish him off, but thankfully, that did not cost us the win here. Alright, we can go ahead and burn the ceiling tree and make our way up to Radahn. Our run through Anir Limb goes pretty well. We don't run into too many issues on our way up. Of course, though, we do have to run past the Lion Guardian. And this guy over here, the last one, is just the worst, and we actually lose our Rivers of Blood to it. I wasn't planning on using it against Radahn anyway, but I did want to use it against the Three Musketeers, so kinda sucks that we won't have that as an option. I did end up using Rakshas's Great Katana, and that just destroyed the Three Musketeers. Again, they were just stunned the entire time, so kinda sucks for them. And now we're on to Radahn. And of course, we're gonna end this with our Moonveil Katana. My favorite katana, and one of my favorite weapons in the game. I've done just about enough battling throughout this entire run, so enjoy the Radahn fight as always. If you guys want to subscribe, go for it. That would be awesome, but only if you actually like this type of content. I don't want you to subscribe just because, I don't know, you feel bad for me. But if you could, that would mean the world. But of course, your viewership is always enough for me. So enjoy the rest of the Radahn fight right here, and I will catch you when we either die or finish this fight. Okay, so we died, and we lost Moonveil. Again, the only reason that I actually did this run was so that I could use Moonveil, and I lost it. I then lost Rakshas's Great Katana in the next attempt. But finally, we did attempt this with the Serpent Bone, the first weapon we used against a boss, and hopefully the last weapon that we'll use against a boss. And the extra poison damage from the Serpent Bone Katana was really nice against Radahn here. It didn't take out a lot of his health, some bleeds would have been nicer, but it's something extra for not playing the game any differently. And with this, we finally managed to get Radahn into his third phase, and I was even more prepared this time than the Moonveil one because I actually had Lord's Divine Fortification on. The spell, or I guess incantation, that massively increases your holy damage resistance. Radahn is almost dead, but we are quickly running out of healing, and I almost died right there, so this is getting pretty close. We only have 8 more lives left, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot, considering Radahn, especially because during my first couple of challenge runs in the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, my fights against Radahn would take me multiple hours and dozens of attempts each time. So there is a very real possibility that he's just going to wipe us right here, and that we will lose this run. That being said, his Light of Mikola attack does allow us to heal up real quick and get off another Lord's Divine Fortification to buff our holy damage resistance. And then he almost destroys us. But we can use our last healing flask to stay out of the red. Radahn made his final mistake when he went for one last grab attack, which allows us to counter and end him. We won! Whew. Honestly, katanas are incredible in this game, so I wasn't too worried about it even though we only had 8 lives left. I was about 95% sure that we could take him out, so I'm glad that it only cost us 2 katanas, and that was just a really fun run. Again, thanks so much for watching, guys. I will catch you in the next video, and I hope you have a good one. Peace.